And I told her I don't care if he is her husband. Right now,
It's time to rise from the grave, pour yourself a cup, and enjoy the coffee crypt.
Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com. And a very special thank you to our Patreon subscribers.
Hey fam, Newman here from Movies for Days, your non-pretentious easy access movie chat podcast and weekly deep dive into any film from any genre, from any decade with anybody's guess as to how we chose that movie that week. Proud member of the You Run Podcast Network. Check us out where all great podcasts can be heard. And on Twitter at MoviesDays. Movies is spelled regular, Days is spelled with a Z.
Good morning, and welcome to another coffee break edition of the Coffee Crypt. Just me here with you today to talk about a few headlines from horror in the last couple of weeks. I know we haven't really had a few episodes of the Coffee Crypt lately, so lots to talk about, but we're going to keep this one short, and then Angel and I will be back next week with a little bit of a longer deep dive into the latest trailers and news and all the stuff that you love. So without further ado, we got four main stories that I sort of wanted to share my thoughts with you today. So the first big one that got me really excited, and you probably have heard, so this isn't breaking news. We're not really trying to be scoopers here anyway. Is Mike Flanagan is on board to direct the follow-up, reset, reboot, I don't know, whatever they're trying to do with it, of The Exorcist, which is probably the best choice they could have gone with. If you know me and you know Angel, we love the Haunting series, Midnight Mass. Mike Flanagan is incredible when it comes to character development and relationships and really telling a powerful, engaging story, which is something that unfortunately I think a lot of us felt that Deceiver was kind of not Deceiver, Believer was kind of lacking. Deceiver was the scrapped sequel. So they'll probably, I don't know, they're going to keep this Deceiver. They're completely dropping every character from Believer, maybe. I didn't absolutely hate Believer, but it left a lot to be desired, unfortunately. Granted, big shoes to fill, right? The Exorcist is a classic for a reason. It has set the standard for possession films. There's a few that have come out, I think, that have definitely made their mark and have done something unique and different. I think Believer had some ideas that were definitely worth exploring, but they just it was definitely half-baked. I love the idea of a double possession. I wish they didn't really give that away in the trailer, but and I really enjoyed the main father-daughter relationship in that one. But unfortunately, right, I think I don't want to say at the cost of that, because I think everyone could have been better developed, and I don't think you would have had to sacrifice anything. But like the Friends family was very flat. And then unfortunately, our returning characters, Chris and spoiler alert, we got a very brief cameo from Linda. So what they did with Chris was just so just not great. But this isn't a time to complain about Exorcist Believer. This is getting excited for what Mike Flanagan has. This is supposed to be, I guess, a total 180 pivot. They're going in a different direction. It's supposed to be a fresh take. I would love if Mike Flanagan, especially considering what he did with Midnight Mass, I would love if he sort of re-explored what they were doing in Believer in terms of different religious mythologies and understandings of what possession is, getting into like root magic, or you could just do whatever religion or non-religious group, some other sort of understanding of what possession is would be really cool. as well. And I think that's kind of the direction we should go. I definitely think the priest saving the day storyline and the priest sort of losing faith and all that stuff those sort of storylines have kind of played out a little bit, I think. And I think yeah, just something fresh for sure. And I think Mike can do it. I think, because especially, considering that the original Exorcist, yes, was scary for the time, but also focused on the characters, right? The mother-daughter relationship, the mother-son relationship with um father, totally blanking on his name, but our main priest. It's been a minute. Yeah, and I think that as long as and I trust him, because he's also pretty good with mythology, and weaving in sort of the ghostly stories and the paranormal with the very human emotional arcs. He's good at weaving those two pretty well. So I definitely have faith. I think this is the right call. And yeah, so we'll see. I trust him. I don't know if I trust the studio. I hope there's not a lot of studio meddling. Let him do what he's going to do. Let him cook. Let's see what happens. But yeah, let us know what you think about Mike Flanagan directing the next Exorcist film. We did get a release date, though, on that, which I believe is in 2026. It's going to be March 3rd, 2026. So that'll be interesting. I'm very excited. Also in 2026, we are getting the fourth directorial project from Jordan Peele. I am major Jordan Peele fan. I mean, Mike Flanagan, Jordan Peele, these are top tier, like Mount Rushmore directors for me in the modern era. My favorite of Peele's is Us. I know Get Out is sort of, I think that's the one that's gotten the most accolades, and people tend to go with Get Out. But I just feel like Us was just so beautiful, and like the staging and the choreography and the use of music and just the performances that Peele got out of the actors, and like just everything, I feel like for me was firing on all cylinders. Not that I didn't like Get Out or Nope. I think both incredible films. And I love that he's exploring different subgenres within the horror umbrella. He's focused a lot on producing. We've gotten Candyman. He's worked in obviously The Twilight Zone and Lovecraft Country. He's done a lot, on behind the scenes in like the producing realm. But very excited to see him back in the director's chair. Very curious what I would love. I mean, he's obviously done sci-fi. He's done more psychological. Us, that's sort of a hard subgenre to kind of pinpoint, right? It's a bit thriller. I guess it's also a little bit psychological. It's more, does get a little more actiony, right, than some of the other ones. But yeah, I think I definitely would love to see something a little more paranormal from him. I think something a little more ghostly, something, maybe see what his take on like a haunted house film could be like. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, so let's see. What do you think? What are you hoping to see from Jordan Peele next? Our third story is going to be a new film from Lee Cronin, director of Evil Dead Rise. So April 17th in 2026. 2026 is going to be a packed year. So teaming up with New Line Cinema, there is a mysterious project. There's been a lot of speculation as to what that project can be. Obviously, a lot of us associate New Line Cinema with Nightmare on Elm Street. So the quote here, which has everyone kind of speculating. Cronin says, collaborating with Jason, James, and the wonderful teams from these two storied and massively successful organizations is what perfect nightmares are made of. Obviously, keyword here being nightmares, but that doesn't necessarily mean Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously. But really cool to think that that's a possibility. I mean, Michael Myers has had his flowers recently. We've gotten a wave of Halloween. We'll see what's going to happen with the Friday the 13th series. But very cool to see Nightmare on Elm Street possibly getting some love. We will see. Obviously, won't be disappointed. So I won't be disappointed if it's not Nightmare, because I think Lee Cronin definitely proved himself with Evil Dead Rise. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm excited to sort of see what he comes up with. I mean, the other quote that is interesting from Jason Blum, though, Cronin has an intriguing modern take on something quite ancient that I think audiences will love. Gifted filmmaker in the world of horror whose storytelling has electrified audiences. So something quite ancient. Ancient is an interesting word here, right? Are we talking something a little more cosmic, right? Something a little Lovecraftian, cosmic-y, something, are we maybe tapping into some universal monster stuff? That's been getting some love a bit more lately. Sort of our classic monsters. So I'd be really curious. Ancient, my hat in the ring, or my bet might be something a little cosmic, something kind of cool on that, maybe even like Event Horizon-y. We'll see. I mean, I'm pretty curious. But yeah, that's gonna be April 17th. So yeah, back to back, right? We got March, we got The Exorcist from Mike Flanagan. April, we've got Lee Cronin's mysterious film. A few months after that, in October, we've got Jordan Peele and his newest film. So in 2025, so year prior, next year, our last story that I sort of wanted to share some thoughts on is Bill Skarsgård is confirmed to return for the Pennywise prequel for Max. They're eyeing for next year, so hopefully production is starting very soon. So we'll see. So the series is supposed to begin in the 1960s, leading up to the events of Part 1. So about 20 years. Part 1's the 80s. So we're talking about 20 years before the first movie. So that'll be interesting to see sort of who Pennywise is targeting here. Obviously missing kids is sort of common in Derry at this point, right? So perhaps we'll get a little bit more of an insight, because obviously Pennywise pops up. So I love the idea of, every time it pops up, that, there's sort of an interesting story there. And there's almost this collection of victims or maybe survivors down the line that could maybe cross over, different, I definitely want interesting characters as well, right? Because it could be very one note, I think, right? You don't want to just retell the story of the losers, right? You want to have something unique, something interesting to tell. So I think definitely where that comes in, I think the character development has to be on point. Like really, like what are the things about these characters that Pennywise is, manipulating and toying them about. And supposedly going to also include the origins of Pennywise, right? So we get a little bit of that in Part 2, right? But I would love to definitely see a bit more of sort of his cosmic origins. Maybe the first times, that Pennywise has. Like, it'd be really cool, like sort of like the early humans who are in the area, right? And what did they see? So obviously it wouldn't be a clown, right? Pennywise would be something else. So I'd be really curious to see how they do go about that. And I'd be curious to see, is it going to be more of like an anthology, or is it going to just solely stay in this like 1960s timeline? Are we just getting one season of kids or whoever, right, that Pennywise is targeting? So it'd be really interesting. I think it's a cool idea. I also love that Muschietti is back and probably going to direct some episodes, as well as various directors. Stephen Ryder from the Daredevil series, right? Oh, sorry, my bad. Starring Taylor Page, Jovan Adepo from Watchmen, Chris Chalk from Perry Mason, James Raymer from Oppenheimer, Madeline Stowe from Revenge, her I remember, Honestly, off names alone, I think Madeline Stowe is the only one I remember. I know who that is. And then Steven Ryder from Daredevil. I'd have to see pictures of everybody. Sorry to these people. But Madeline Stowe, I remember sort of being the mom in Revenge. Very campy, very sort of soapy kind of performance. But fun nonetheless, and could be interesting here for this series. But yeah, but Andy Muschietti, back with Barbara Muschietti, and Jason Fuchs are on board to return for the project. So that'd be cool. And I love that it's going to be so directly tied to the 2 movies that we got. I do love those movies. I do tend to prefer them over the original miniseries, even though Tim Curry's performance is obviously iconic, stellar. No notes there. It's obviously just everything around it. I really enjoyed the improvements on. So yeah, those are our 4 stories that I just sort of wanted to chew your ears on a little bit. But yeah, let us know. What do you think about Mike Flanagan, Jordan Peele, Lee Cronin, and the new It prequel series? Let us know in the comments, and we will see you next Sunday for a full-length episode of the Coffee Crypt. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.